So like I said, discussing migrating a website today. And so when you're starting a migration, there's a few things you're going to have to think about before you really kick it off heavily. The first one here is what content does the site currently have? The next one is what content will the new website have? And then the big one here is what content gaps are you going to be accommodating for? Because a migration is essentially revolving all around what content you've got. So new, old, and what the difference is between them. So before you kick off the migration, there's a number of things we're going to kind of tick off before we get everything started. So without a doubt, the first thing you should be doing, screaming frog. It is one of the most important things that you scan your site with initially. Just because it's going to give you that initial picture that after a migration, you're no longer going to have. You might have some tools like Wayback Machine and some cache pages and that, but if you don't properly scan your website, you're just not going to know the content that it originally had properly. So Screaming Frog is going to scan everything that's currently linked to on the website, or that you've got in a sitemap. You can set up your URL rules, so you can limit the scanning just to a single site section. You can scan your staging behind a password, so making sure that you can enter your login and your password there, just to be able to scan a staging site where a developer might have set up a test environment, so that Screaming Frog can jump through it all. But then most important factor here is that you can actually export all the data into Excel, so you can start playing with it properly. Next point here is that you really should be grabbing as much ranking data as possible. So you want to analyse a set of keywords that covers as many URLs that you're migrating as possible. Don't get cheap. So it's basically the more data you can get, the better. So the more keyword rankings you've got, the more keywords you've analysed beforehand, the better the outcome can be, because you can analyse it post-migration. Export your Google Webmaster Tools keywords and your pages and your URLs. So you want your clicks, you want your impressions, and average ranking would be great as well. And then you want to be able to add all the URLs to Screaming Frog scan and then dedupe. So once you've done your scan, you've got it all in Excel, you add all your Webmaster Tools URLs in there, you add all your ranking data, you dedupe it, and you've got a good list of pre-migration URL content. Now the next step here is to really kind of work out the difference between the old content and the new content. So what you do is you kind of grab both lists, and now my, I guess, recommended way of doing this would be to remove the URL prefixes to try and get left with something that uniquely identifies that piece of content. So I'll go through something in a minute to kind of highlight this a bit better. But say you're switching domains, you're going from domain1.com to domain2.com. Everything after the domain is the same. So you've got your before and after, it's just the domain bit with the difference. So you cut that out, you'll be able to see if that exact same piece of content is there or whether it's not. And so you run that on both the old and you repeat it for the new, so you can see if there's new content being added or if there's old content being removed. And so what you do is, you VLOOKUP from that unique identifier, one to the other, and you'll be able to work out what's there and what's not. So, making sure your XML sitemaps are ready to go. So, just having all your new URLs in a sitemap sitting there, ready to rock and roll as soon as you kind of do the migration, will get you off to the best foot, will get you going. Now, maintaining the old URLs in a completely separate sitemap could be a little quick win for you, because you can submit that in Webmaster Tools and pretty much ping Google all the redirects immediately. Because after you've done a migration, Google is going to save all those URLs in the cache, but it's not going to know you've done anything to them because you're immediately submitting the sitemap of the new site. So it might know that your main pages have moved in that, but until it tries to refresh its cache of pages, it's not going to know about those redirects. So if you ping Google with all the old URLs in a sitemap, it's going to might refresh it a bit faster. Note any new issues that the new site has that may affect your SEO performance. So if you're not doing the same CMS or the exact same CMS migration, you might be moving from something that's gold to something that's like a pure turd, pretty much. And so it doesn't matter how good your migration is, if you're moving to that turd, you're not going to do well at the end of it. So just make sure that you know any issues that you might come across. And then, is it worth running SEM campaigns during your migration? So every migration is going to have a period of time where you might not be showing up properly in SEO. So brand, chances are you're always going to be there. But for your more generic searches, there might be a period of 1 to 2 weeks, even up to a month or two sometimes, where you're not there. So it might be good to kind of throw some money at Google and get an SEM campaign running to kind of substitute over that short term. So actually planning these redirects. So if only the domain or the prefix, like I was mentioning before, is changing, you can just set up some wildcard redirects. So you go olddomain.com/awesome-content to newdomain.com/awesome-content, and you're done. Or a folder, so domain.com/old awesome content to domain.com/new awesome content, and you're done. It's pretty much party time because it's that easy to do if you were just doing that. But unfortunately, it's rarely that easy, and you'll probably be like this poor lady walking along the street with a nice big sad face on you. So my recommended redirect kind of strategy is to look at 3 main levels of redirects. So the first one here is the wildcard setup. So the wildcard setup before. Looking at your content that's matching, you kind of work out what you've got from your old to your new, and you set up the best wildcard rules you can to limit the amount of redirects that are needed. So one wildcard rule could cover 5,000 to 10,000 redirects. So you want to be able to smash out as many of these as possible with as little redirects, which is what the wildcard does. The next one you should be looking at is a one-to-one content URL redirect. So this is where you've got pretty much the same content, but you are actually changing that URL, and thus you no longer have a rule in place where a wildcard redirect could fit. So you're going from old domain, awesome content, to new domain, amazing article. You want to be able to just have a single rule that covers old to new. And then the third one here, if this awesome content, piece of content, was no longer available in the new website, what you want to be trying to do is one-to-one it to the closest category URL. So this is trying to take, say, a finance-related article and pushing it to the most closely related category for it. So you don't want to be doing a catch-all redirect and redirecting all these back to the home page, which is one of the news items Sideshow brought up before, because it could come up now as a software 04. You want to be redirecting this to something that still has value. So forget Google, forget that. Imagine a user landing on awesome content. Instead of a home page, where would you rather be sending that user? So that's what you've got to kind of think about here. And where possible, let the developer implement these redirects. Don't try to do them yourself, unless you're doing a super small kind of migration. If it stuffs up, then you've got someone to blame. That's always great for one. But secondly, they kind of know what they're doing, so you just kind of let them go. You tell them what you want, hopefully they do what they want, but there's plenty of things you can do to make sure you get what you want. Test them all on a staging site where possible. So it's not a matter of just kind of letting it go. When you're looking at 5,000 URLs being migrated, you really have to test them. Now, can anyone guess how you want to test these, other than sticking a carrot in a fan? Anyone? The frog. Run him through the staging site and you'll be able to scan all your URLs again. I can't tell you how many times you really should be using this for migration. Now, yes?
Question. So do you actually use Screaming Frog for time again? Does it handle that many URLs?
I think I've got it to about 500,000 and it kind of gives up. With a migration like this, you can normally use both modes. So you use your crawling and you use your list. With this, you should be using the list a lot more than the crawling. Like, you do your initial crawl, you work out what you've got, and then it's list, list, list. So you're only doing 5 to 10,000, it takes a few minutes. So some issues that you might face with these redirects. First one is HTTP versus HTTPS. Sometimes a redirect will have it and it shouldn't, sometimes it won't have it and it will have it. It's just a simple little S, but it can be a pain in the ass sometimes. Trailing slash versus no trailing slash. So this is a big one. Developer might just miss out on that little trailing slash at the end. Now it could be the whole new platform is missing out on the trailing slash, and you've redirected to the trailing slash, and everything just errors because it hasn't been done properly. So that's just something to keep in mind. Misspellings. As stupid as it does sound, it does happen. They can completely stuff up a full migration just because they missed a letter in a category or something like that. So just checking for the redirects once I've implemented them and kind of highlight these. And then this again also happens. A week into a migration, they might decide to just turn them off. They might push something new live where it reverted a redirect change someone else made and you no longer have your redirects. So that's where your scanning comes in and just making sure you are looking at it for a few weeks after the migration. Now, during migration, again, there's a few things you can do, and then there's more you kind of can't do while you wait. But the first thing you should be doing is fetching as Google with the Fetch as Googlebot tool, and then submitting your sitemaps to Google to kind of just let it go off on its own and explore the new world. So if you've changed your domain, obviously submit a change of address where you can. Just kind of highlight that you have actually changed it. And then scan the site again. So as soon as the migration goes live, as soon as you're waiting for everything to settle in, just scan your site. And then also scan all your previous URLs. So you've got that pre-list, you've got all the redirect rules you think should be getting set up. Just throw that in the list mode and streaming frog, just making sure that all those URLs are being redirected. And then you're sitting and waiting for a little bit, waiting a bit more, and then this happens because your rankings have started tanking, which is why we start doing the post-migration analysis. So during migration, there's always going to be that few weeks downtime. So this isn't something you should start looking at doing until a couple of weeks after migration, because everything settles down after a little while. And so the first kind of indicator of migration performance is the rankings. It's the only thing that you don't have to wait for data for. You run a scan, you've got that number then and there, so you can thus analyse it whenever you want. So what I do is I always pull my average rankings for this. So I've got X amount of keywords right here, all categorised, using my categorisation stuff. And so April, we've got an average rank there. June, we've got an average rank. And then we've got the grand total average rank. So just looking at this, it's gone from a 27.7 average rank to a 27.6, which you think a little bit better. But we throw that into estimated traffic, which is something I've talked about before. And so estimated traffic is looking at the rankings and then putting it through the search volume of the keywords and a click-through rate model. So if you're number one, it's expected you get 32% of clicks, which on 1,000 searches, you get 320 visits a month. Estimated, thus estimated traffic. So extrapolate that massively across 4.5 million odd searches. And you basically get a before and after estimated traffic, which is a weighted ranking. So even though the average ranking has actually gotten better by 0.1, we've actually lost an estimated 15,000 estimated traffic, which is 10-ish% or so, just under 10%. But you wouldn't have known that had we were just looking at estimated ranking, average rankings. And there you go. So there's a few categories that went up, with some going down, but then everything with estimated traffic went down after this migration. And then the next thing looking at here would be the actual organic traffic through GA. So this, obviously, you do need a little bit of time to kind of settle in. But what you can do, using the same prefix remover as before, you come up with just the unique identifier of the article, and you work out the before migration visits of a couple of weeks or a month. You work out the afterwards, and then the change. So you can easily highlight the URLs that have been most impacted by the migration. So you can see here that one lost almost 3,000 visits, another one had 1,600 or so. And so we can work out, was there something wrong with the redirects, or what actually went wrong there. So yeah, strip back your unique identifier, and then analyze the URL level, or you can also categorize. So using the same categorization stuff for the keywords, you can use it for URLs. So if you have 5,000 URLs, based on the category of that content, it might come out with 5 categories. And then you can see the impact based on certain categories. And then another point you can check is Webmaster Tools and your search console data. Now, if you've checked your rankings, you've checked your landing pages, you probably don't really need to do this because it really is just another point of confirmation. But you can see there, excuse me, you can see that clicks are down a few thousand, impressions are down a few thousand, and average rank came down as well, got worse. Now, if you don't have migration data, there's a little trick I worked out I could do with SEMRush data. Hooray for SEMRush. But basically what we can do is download historic, and we can download recent ranking performance using SEMRush. So I think it's $60 US or something. And what we can do is we can go in and download April's rankings. We can download the latest one being August, export it all. Now for the base level account, I think you get around 30,000 euros per export, which is enough to kind of give us a good range of data to analyse. And for the majority of websites, 30,000 keywords is plenty. And so what you do is you basically export as much as possible. So April's, export August's. And then a little trick I learned here is you can, if you want to kind of beat out that 30,000 limit, you kind of just sort the data. So if you sort it by a certain column, you can get around SEMrush's account limit there. You sort it by a few columns, and you might be able to export 100,000 or so. So just the SEMrush hack there. Now, when you export SEMrush data, it's not just going to give you the one rank. It's going to give you all the positions you ranked for. So if you're exporting a result that had, say, 100 rankings, if you're going to export a keyword that had 100 rankings, you might be 2, 3, 4 rankings within that data. So it might export you as second, third, fourth, and fifth. Now, for any sort of migration, that's going to be a pain in the ass once you start actually sourcing it, because you might accidentally analyse that you were in fifth before, and now you're in third. And so you might think you've increased, whereas your best rank before was actually second. So you haven't increased. So what we can do is sort by the keyword, then sort by the rank, lowest to highest, and then remove dupes of the keywords. And what that'll do is if you've got 5 keywords, 5 rankings for the same keyword, it'll sort them minimum to maximum, and then delete everything but the minimum. So you're only going to be left with the best rank from before. Throw it all into a single file, and then using a VLOOKUP. So what you do is you bring one file into an Excel sheet, then you VLOOKUP to that keyword to the other file, and so you can bring in your June ranking, you can bring in your old and your new ranking URLs, so that you've all got it in a single place. And then you want to be bringing back the frog. You want to be scanning all the old URLs, and you want to be able to go all their status codes. So if you say you had a client that did a migration, they completely screwed it up, they came to you 2 months later, 3 months later, and wanted you to fix it. You can go back and pretty much find all the content they had ranking in a decent position by doing this. So by running this content through Screaming Frog, you're going to be able to get your status codes to know whether it was redirected, know if it's 404, know if it hasn't changed at all. But then you're going to be able to confirm if the redirected URL is currently the ranking URL. So did that redirect work, or did something else start ranking for it? And then let you see if you actually missed anything. So were there any pieces of content there that are now 404 and that should be redirected instead? And one thing I was doing here was actually filtering this SEMRush data by status code. So on the left we've got the 200, which means obviously that didn't change the migration. You got the 301s, which are all the redirects, and then you got the pieces of content that were 404ing and weren't found. And so what actually happened, the URLs that weren't touched decreased by 4,000 estimated traffic, 4%, not too worried about that. The URLs that were redirected decreased by 30%, or 5,500 estimated traffic. But then, most importantly here, the URLs that weren't redirected, the ones that are now erroring, decreased by 4,000 estimated traffic, which was 55% of the estimated traffic they had before we started this migration. So in this chart alone, I found one single URL that was responsible for about half of this, where it was missing a trailing slash, and the devs had redirected the one with the slash, but not the one that was originally ranking that didn't have the slash, and thus we didn't get that value passed through. They quickly did it and it came back, so it was fine. But it's a nice and easy way just to filter out the stuff that pretty much went wrong. Now, a few of my tips when doing a migration. So the first one here is how to remove the category base, or how to remove the domain, I guess. And so what I do is I use the substitute formula. So you basically start off with the original text, which is referencing the URL. You're then doing the text to change, which is just domain.com/category, because it's going to be the exact same across them all. And then change to, which for this one is just blank, because we don't have to change anything, we just want to remove that prefix. And so I presume most people that will be doing this will be doing a find and replace. But once you do a find and replace, that original URL is gone from that set of data. So chances are something will stuff up. Chances are you'll want to go back to that, but you'll no longer have the link between the no prefix and the original URL. So doing it this way allows you to just kind of keep those two columns nice and clean and maintaining that formula there, because you can just keep the formula. You don't need to separate out that value. Modify category bases with the categorization formula. So instead of doing the substitute, you can do it this way as well. But what this is basically doing is giving me a new URL by swapping out the original category, which is here, with the new category. So categorizing with find, which is here. So looking in that first one, finding this, and then giving what's in C. And then categorizing it here. So when it finds category, it gives a new category. When it finds article, it changes it to news. And then using the combination of those first two, we can basically build that new URL by substituting the old for the new. Great little plugin if you're doing something yourself, or if you've got a small-ish WordPress site, but install this plugin. What you can do is manage all your redirects within it, but then it's going to pick up any 404s you've got afterwards. So it's going to keep a log of them. Every time someone hits a page that errors, this thing will tell you about it. You can click a button and you get redirected somewhere. So it's nice and easy. And now something I started playing around with, but you can guess a new URL by scraping a blog post's category using import XML in Google Docs. So what might happen is, let's say you're moving your content from the root domain, off the base of the root domain, to be within a category. But you're doing it across a few thousand URLs and you don't know what that category is. So you've got your domain, you've got your URL, you don't know what that category is going to be assigned to that URL. I mean, you can look it up one by one, but it's going to take you forever. So what you can kind of do is guess it, and with a decent accuracy as well. So let's say Moz wanted to add the category within this URL. So they've got that category listed on the actual website itself. So they've got the blog post name there, and then they've got technical SEO, which is the category this will fall within. So using this import XML formula, we can scrape that category from the page. Now, this whole thing is really long just because the way Moz has designed the website, there's nothing else that uniquely identifies that. But what this is doing is, firstly, it's making it horizontal because we don't want stuff vertical. It's looking at the URL, which is next to this formula, what you're searching in. So it's looking in a div that has the class of all this stuff. And then you want to extract the link that's in that. And so what you get is that's the URL, that's where the formula is being run, but you get this. So this is the category URL, which here is what you want. This permalink, the technical SEO part, because for all you know, that category link could just be technical and they haven't just added SEO in it. So this kind of lets you pull it out. And now you can essentially guess that URL is going to be /blog /technical-SEO and then the content piece behind it. So you wouldn't do this one piece of content at a time. The idea of doing this is when you go to do a couple hundred at least, or thousands at a time, you just let this thing run and it kind of saves you a few hours and more importantly saves you the boring work of doing it yourself. And then so to complete a successful migration, you'd be preparing with as much data as possible. You'd be comparing the old and the new content and then working out the differences between them. Investigating those 3 levels of redirects I was talking to you about before. Analysing before and after rankings along with the URLs, making sure it's the right content showing up in the right places. And of course, getting the frog back. Use him as much as you can because he'll save a lot of time afterwards. And thank you.